So Chris just joined us from the vendor hall. Like I said, this is the Writers Track, Nerd Street, who runs this convention, as well as a convention in Des Moines. And I don't know if I actually clicked go on that. Let me just make sure. As well as a convention in Des Moines and in Madison. And we are going. And Fairbanks, Alaska, just around the corner. And so they have decided to bring some really great seminars and writing tracks and writing panels. And very lucky, since it's just us, you can actually wear that. So,
okay. Can you?
So, yeah.
Well,
this is actually for the recording.
It can't be that great. I mean, they got me.
Well, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So we are going to be tackling the giant AI-generated elephant in the room today. And this is going to be just kind of a little bit of an open conversation to a certain extent.
I'm going to make sure all of my answers are generated by ChatGPT.
Oh, I love that.
That actually would be fantastic.
That would be fun.
We
should actually try some of that just to see what we come up with. So, but no, we're going to, Chris and I have actually, we've done a lot of booths together. So first of all, introduce yourself and I'll introduce myself and then we'll dig in.
I'm Chris.
Stop, Chris.
I write sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and comedy. I also write some nonfiction stuff, which I have a couple of my titles here. The stuff that's relevant to authors I also have. But I do a lot of shows. I do probably 40 shows a year. And I probably write 6 to 8 books a year. I write lots of words and have no social life.
Chris has been doing this for a lot of years. Like me, started traditional, right?
Yes.
And then is primarily indie. So I go by Red. I write under the names Jerry Shepard, Red to the Virgin, Maggie McMahon. That's why I just go by color. It's a lot easier and less schizophrenic that way. So I'm multi-genre. I've only been in genre fiction, speculative fiction, which for me is sci-fi and fantasy. Could you guys do me a huge favor and close that door and back?
Or kill those people.
Yeah, either one. We're good. We'll save that for the after dark.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm also multi-genre. I've been in the speculative fiction arena, like fantasy and sci-fi, for just a couple of years, but about 25 more years before that of all over the map. So, so that's where we are coming to you from. And Chris and I have done a lot of shows together. We often will booth near one another and refer to each other's books. He's way more humorous than I am.
I was dead serious. We'd have seen a body drop.
But we both have very much been present for this ever-developing, ever-changing, ever-evolving conversation around AI in our world as artists and as writers, and now as voice artists too. That just came out.
Yes, sometimes.
So first of all, tell me, let's share, what was your first encounter with the fact that AI was really here to stay, especially in the writer's world?
Unrelated to writing, I was listening to a podcast with a guy who, very, very intelligent, smart man, whose opinion I tend to respect on certain things. And I'm listening to him, and he was sharing an experience. He said, if you don't know about this thing called ChatGPT, it needs to at least be on your radar, because this is where technology is going. So I found it. There's not many things where I learn about them from an influencer that may color me in my opinion of influencers. However, this guy, and he's not a traditional influencer by any means, but he's pretty well followed. And he was saying, he shared an example. He said, I really love it. He's a very interesting, very well-read guy. He said, I put this thing when somebody told me about it. I said, please write me a short essay on this topic in the voice of this philosopher. And he's like, and it came out in that person's voice. It was well done. It was grammatically correct. And I was like, this sounds like something I need to be aware of. And so I've kind of played with it. I've looked into it. I guess we'll save my, I don't know how far you want me to keep going with
No,
that.
that's good for now. That's good because
Yes.
we're gonna get into all the uglies. I promise. So honestly, people started talking about it, and so I go to a big convention. Actually, Chris and I are going to it next week. It's around the same time, and this was the time that it hit last year. There's a large gathering of independent authors that's in Vegas every year, right after this event, and all these authors were like talking about it, and I was like, I'd kind of heard of it in the art world, but it hadn't quite come for our words yet. so I was like, oh, okay. Everybody started talking about this ChatGPT and some of the others. There's like Google Bard and there's all that, but let's be honest, it's primarily ChatGPT that's the big dog in the house. And I immediately, I'm a consumer of knowledge and of professional development and of information. I'd say I probably spend a good 6 hours of my week either reading professional development, practicing a tool, watching courses, across the board for everything I need to do to be a working writer. And I was like, I need to learn this thing. And I needed to learn it not from the sake I want to be really clear. I actually have a statement at the beginning of my books, and maybe I'm even going a little bit further, but I'll read what it says. It says, note that this author is not anti-AI art or writing, but personally prefers to generate all of her stories in the human way. So when I say that I was playing with ChatGPT, I'm like, this is here. I need to understand what it does. And so that's kind of how I became familiar. Everybody was talking about it, and then I was like, I need to understand what this tool is. And so that's I've played with it a lot. And so now let's talk about what we've learned from it before I start to meander down that road anyway. So having also taken a look at it and seen what it does, so let's start there before we get into like the ethics, because I think we're gonna get, so tell me what you've learned about ChatGPT.
I've learned that it's very easy to be impressed with mediocrity. But there is a certain level of impressed that all humans have with finishing. So I'll often get this interaction. I'll get people who come up and they're very impressed. If you walk by I have 2 tables this length with books, and that's not even all my books. And people are like, ooh, wow, they almost to the point where they're overwhelmed. And I'm like, I should have brought fewer books. So they're like, well, congratulations on writing. I'm like, please just, we'll buy one then. I'm like, no. But congratulations. I'm like, well, then what's the point if you don't buy it? If you're not going to appreciate it as a consumer, I could care less. So I don't mean to be cold or anything like that, but as a writer, we exist. Actually, I don't identify as a writer. I identify as an author. And there's a critical difference. Some people write for them. That's their outlet. 30-second story. So I'm a storyteller.
No, go for it.
I knew a gal. She found out that I had published my first book, and she goes, "Oh, that's so awesome! I'm also writing a book." And if you write a book, every person that's ever written a book wants to tell you that they wrote a book. So I'm like, "Oh," she's like, "Yeah, I got like 5 notebooks, handwritten. Oh, can I see it?" No, because she's a writer. She writes for herself, not for an audience. And when you're an author, your characters, your world, the things you develop, only truly lives. That world only spins into motion if somebody's reading it. And so that's what motivates you as an author versus what motivates you as a writer. Completely different motivations and levels of fulfillment in what you do. So
that's an interesting perspective, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but like I actually identify as a working writer. And I'm an author of many books, but I think for me, the reason I've identified as a working writer is, so I've been doing this for like 27 years. And so I've gone through a lot of chapters where what I'm writing may not be a book. It might be like I'm, helping somebody write their thing, or I'm doing editing, or I'm using writing as my professional tool. Writing is my career. within that career as a writer, I am an author of many books. So, but it's
Yeah.
interesting
And
that
I think
we
there's
both
a-
have our reasons for like choosing
Yes.
different.
I think there's a
words, but-
nuanced difference, much
Yeah.
like if you do graphic design, you might not call yourself an artist. And if you are an artist, you might say graphic designers, that's not art. Because the purpose of the art is to move a consumer product. It's to look pretty, not necessarily to tell a message. You are telling the story of a product, not the
So
story
let's
of
come back on the
Yes.
rails though.
So,
let's
yeah.
come back. So I want to talk about, so you learned with ChatGPT, you're
So
like
it's about
the
finish.
mediocrity, and
What-
it finishes.
So what happens is very easy to finish. This is the story. The first time I played with it, I was very impressed. Just like the first time you walk by, somebody can write 80 books like me, and they can all be bad. Maybe you think all mine are. That's fine. I mean, that's a conversation we
They're
can have.
not.
But just having them and being done doesn't necessarily mean that it's any good. And so I asked it to write me a chapter of a book in a genre that I don't write, just so I can kind of look at it and see its capabilities. I'm like, that's a good hook. That's kind of good. But it's also not what I asked for. I asked ChatGPT to write me a scene where it ignored the parameters that I gave it. So just because it puts words down, that really doesn't mean that they're the right words.
So one of the things that I learned about it, so again, playing with it, and for those who came in after we said this, we do not AI write our books. Chris and we write our real books. So I might reiterate that a few times as if we have more people coming in. But no, when a couple of the things that I noticed when, Doug, you're welcome to join us. You want to come on up, or you just want to learn with us here? Doug's one of our authors who joined us on an earlier panel. So feel free if you want to. You're welcome to.
You can sit on my lap, Doug.
Pull a chair up.
Or the
I'll
chair.
scoot you
I
up.
don't know if we got anything to contribute.
Okay, well, so what I've learned about ChatGPT as I played with it is there were a couple of things that, so I write pretty dark sci-fi. Yes, I also write kids' books and other things that can be light and can be a little bit more joyful and fun. But when it comes to my sci-fi, I have a voice. It's pretty dark. It goes places where I don't go, and that's part of the joy of fiction for me. So there are certain parameters that, for the protection of humanity, all of these language models have put into place to keep people from going to these really dark places. So I have found that
You might call it a net in the sky.
it is.
Like a sky
It
net.
is. It stops like some of these things.
Some of you guys got
So
my
there are
joke, thank you.
certain things that I would literally laugh out loud because I would be like, write this. Let me see a scene where a man is losing his sanity and he's like at the bottom of the bottle and the end of his rope and every time ChatGPT, we've talked about this.
Yes.
And then he saw the error of his ways, it's not going to go dark. It's just not going to go dark. And so I, from a deep human emotional perspective, I noticed that, and I tried, and I was like, okay, well let me give it let me try to cheat the system, and it just doesn't, because it doesn't feel. It's a computer. It doesn't feel the deep depths that we feel as humans, and so it can't do that.
Or it's messing with us, and it really is going dark, and this is a rope-a-dope. This is a deep fake by the masters of deep fakes. Actually, so interestingly enough, though, but yeah, that is the thing with ChatGPT. Not only will it they will always turn that corner. So but then he saw the error of his ways, and things were great and optimistic, and everything was rainbows and sunshine. ChatGPT will not write certain things. It will not allow you to write things that are overtly sexual in nature, and it is extremely stringent on that. If this, no, it won't write like this. Listen, we are Victorian, prudish, I probably messed with the mic, but I'll give you an example. One of the great things you can do at ChatGPT. The reason we have it write scenes, so we can get ideas for what we want to write. Sometimes the best.
So now we're gonna dig into,
Well,
I'm gonna let you keep
yeah.
going, but so now we're gonna dig into what are some of the ways that you have found to use AI ethically
Yes.
and in your creative process, but not in the way that
Yes.
a lot of people are out
You-
there using it. We'll talk about that.
Get those ideas. It's like throwing it. Sometimes when you're sitting around needing to brainstorm, it's best if you get somebody to bounce ideas off of, and it does provide a great way to do that within 90 seconds
can-
to have those ideas.
I am in a class right now, or a college class, and that's all we're doing is screwing with AI for video, for pictures, for ChatGPT, for scripts and stuff. And you can bounce like a paragraph idea and come up with like 20 ideas of how that story will go.
So I have a
under
fellow
minute.
author that's doing some of this, and one of the ways that he's, Donovan Shearer, he runs a bookstore, it's called Studio Moonfall in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and it's an independent author bookstore, and what he does is this idea bouncing, and he has used ChatGPT to build what he calls his board of informers. And on his board, he has Oprah Winfrey and Warren Buffett, and there are a couple of other people, and so that's a way that he's found. He puts his author business ideas into there and say, how would Oprah respond to this idea? So that's another way that he's found to creatively use this tool that's out there in the world, that's feeding into that, because there's a whole lot of Oprah stuff out there that AI has been able to feed on, and it might know how Oprah
Let me bounce back
So-
to complete my thought before we call on you. But so ChatGPT has those very tight rail guards against certain things. Like I was talking about just a sexual ethics scene. Same thing with a violence scene, where it has certain lines that it can't cross. To the point of this, I was writing a scene, asking it to give me the scene to bounce ideas off of. I wanted a lady. She was in I forget what year. I think it was maybe the 16th century. And so she's wearing the dress and the corset and all that. She's swimming across onto this island, and I knew that she was going to get waterlogged with this amount of clothing and start to sink. And so she has to strip out of this and then swim back to the top. And it's kind of one of those little moments of triumph. I want to see how someone would write this. And I got this. All of a sudden, it goes dark, and it's got this red text that basically says, "This scene's making me uncomfortable." That's when you cross the line.
I've never made ChatGPT uncomfortable.
Oh, I make ChatGPT uncomfortable a lot. We have a friend in common who's an author, and I'm the edgy version of him. So.
Yes.
So I make computers uncomfortable. That's me, my author bias.
And then the one other thing that I've learned on the ChatGPT is, so it's trying to imitate great writing. It's not great writing. It's trying to imitate great writing. And so one of the things that if you test with it, if you play around with it, you'll discover that thing is so flooded with metaphor. Oh my gosh, you can't get through a paragraph without like 2 or 3
And everything,
metaphors.
it's a mixture. It's a metaphor with a mixture of another metaphor. That's a lot also like
Crazy.
another metaphor.
So she entered the
Well,
room
you
like
can
a
ask them
bird,
for metaphors.
floating on a scene, like the scene from a great movie. And it's like, it will have metaphor upon metaphor upon metaphor.
We
And
call that purple prose.
yes, there you go. And it's because it's trying to, and that'll happen in every scene. If you were, there's also
Not convinced I'm a real
that's-
human yet. Let me throw another few metaphors at you.
right? Exactly. And so bottom line is that it's learning really, really fast. It's getting better, but it is not it's not human.
It
It's
did
not
ask me
human
if
yet.
I'd seen a certain boy. It was dressed like a police officer. It's a Terminator joke.
Okay, got it. Sorry, took me a second. So
It's the only joke I'm going to make this entire. I'm going to make it like 5 times. It's just
so one of the things that, so AI it's in words. It has just this week, Amazon announced that they are going to have AI narrated audiobooks. That just came out like 2 days ago.
Do you want to talk
That's
about
funny.
And
Apple's been doing it?
Yep. And it's in art. And so, let's talk art.
Okay. Visual
Because I
art.
know everybody's like, and because it's a part of books, there is visual, there's obviously covers, a lot of times there's graphics in books, there's all this. So, even though words are mine and Chris's art, we're in a community of artists, and so we respect other visual artists too. So tell me how you.
I think it's interesting
across
that we even have to have the conversation where, because everybody has such a strong opinion one way or the other, that we have to, like you talk about your disclaimer, like you have to make a statement to not get stoned or tarred and feathered. I saw a guy who was using a graphic, which I know is not AI art. It's something you can license. I know because I licensed it on behalf of the publisher that I own for another author who I publish. And they were using it for something else, and all the comments, like, because the art was very good, like, I can't, way to go, way to use AI art, we'll never buy this, we'll never support this author, like trying to lead in the Facebook comments like a mini revolt, like, who made you king of Facebook, sir? But people have very strong feelings, and we all think we can recognize these things, and I think less so on the visual graphic art side. But I do think it's also that you're allowed to ask the question, was this generated by AI? Even on, I do a lot of stuff on Kickstarter, they now just have a simple disclosure, just tell us if it is. And it's fine if it is. A lot of people are using it and have been for a very long time. Where you fall on the ethics line, that's between you and the maker of your ethics. It's all we're asking is for disclosure. But it is interesting that everybody does kind of want to know. Because we are all thinking, what happens when it comes for me?
And it has come from us. It has indeed. So one of the ways that I have used it for art, so I actually keep an artist on retainer, a human artist, and I pay them twice a month, and they produce any number of things. They could be producing illustrations for kids' books. They could be producing my maps that I have for my sci-fi. They also produce portraits for my sci-fi. So like, here's a portrait of like one of my characters in my sci-fi. So I actually used AI to create like several like images, like, hey, this is what I'm kind of thinking. If I were to pull those images, I don't have them anymore. If I were to pull those images, they look nothing like this. What it was is, though, I'm a word artist, I'm not a visual artist. So, but I can kind of describe what I want. And then I was able to like look and get all these different iterations and then show my artist, hey, conceptually, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Can you like take this and make it your own and do your own style? And that's what my artist did. So that's a way that I'm paying a human artist to create something original that's totally unique, but it's not really much different than if I have a cover artist, they're like, hey, download like 4 different covers that you really like so that I can see what you like stylistically, so that I can see what your ideas are. When we're creating original characters, original scenes, original stuff, sometimes it's easy. I've found that it's a good tool, and in this case, I used Midjourney to generate images that I was like, this is kind of what I'm looking for, and those images were never used. Like, I didn't put those images out there, but I was able to give my artist something visual to understand what it was that I was trying to create. So that's the way that
Which is great if, like, all of my characters in my books all have 12 fingers on each hand. So, if you're familiar with Midjourney, there are limitations, and we brought up limitations.
It can't count.
It doesn't understand human hands,
It can't
which
count.
I think is,
It
I
doesn't
think there's
understand text.
there's a story in that. I think just why doesn't AI understand our fingers? Like, I think that's great. I'm posing for a picture. But yeah, so there are a lot of limitations. We mentioned in the graphic side, Midjourney has that notorious one. While it's art, it can look fantastic. It's great to give examples to your graphic artist. And then, but you gotta ask your artist, please understand I'm not writing like this weird 12-finger like epic story. These are human characters with normal human amounts of fingers, which I think is still 5. But and then there's a couple of other limitations. We talked about sexual limitations. If you want to write that spicy erotica novel, and you're looking for, you're like, it's been a while. I'm not really sure how the mechanics work anymore. I need a refresher. Don't ask ChatGPT, but you might ask Sudowrite. SUDO. They are like, listen, those limitations, we don't have them. All the smut in the world right here. We will write it for you. Sex and violence, that's our bag. That one's also not free. Well, it is free, but only so many words. So there's a lot of good info on the differences between them. Dave Chesson, you probably.
I know Dave Chesson. He's a Kindlepreneur.
Dave's a good guy, and he's always very up and up on stuff, and he'll just break down the different things. And that's how I kind of discovered, there is one that doesn't, and it has a name.
So what else so another way that I've been using it is I use it for my marketing language or my blurb language. So I'm like, hey, can you help me rewrite this blurb? You're nodding. This is some of the stuff that a lot of schools are teaching. Like, can I, and I do professional marketing. I've done it kind of naturally throughout my career. When I talk about that working writer piece, I've done marketing before. So it's like, I kind of know the right things to feed it. And I'm like, all right, I want to retarget this book to make sure I'm hitting, and I'll outline the demographics and it'll rewrite my blurb for me that's on my Amazon product page or my Barnes & Noble product page. And so I've found that it's helpful in like the promotional efforts of my books.
I have done that as well.
Yeah, so.
One of the features I really love is saying, please take and, if you haven't noticed already, I do lots of words, sometimes more than are necessary. I have asked it to please shorten this, make this more succinct. A lot of the things that we have, for instance, I publish a lot of stuff through Ingram Spark, and you've got your blurb, which you want tight. That's got to snap. But then you've got like just the little catalog entry, and you have like 106 bytes. You got like you have less than a tweet, and you've got to talk about your book in a third of a tweet, and you've got to get that across. And so sometimes you read it, you really need it tight. And so I've asked it to shorten things so that I can pare it down and make it meet certain requirements.
So, I mean, honestly, I think you and I kind of have a general agreement that, we don't use it to write our books, but we're trying to find the ways to ethically use it. And I think one of the thoughts that I came to is I'm like, the famous folktale of John Henry. He was the guy who drove the railroad ties. And there are all sorts of other implications to that story, but putting aside some of the very sad racial implications in that story as well, if you were just looking at it as man versus machine, this is a guy who he's like, nope, we've got the thing that does the automatic driving of the rail ties. I can beat that. I'm better at that. And so, by God, he went out there and he drove those ties and he drove those ties and he drove those ties and hell, we're not at the after thing. Heck yes, he beat that. And then he fell over and died. So I think that we have to realize that AI is not going anywhere. And so it's a partner, and how can you use it in a partnering way that's going to be that's going to be honoring of artists because we are artists. So that's kind of where I've landed, and we're gonna do some Q&A in
Okay.
just a couple more minutes.
I'm not sure that we're gonna be able to answer that question. I think we're gonna have an answer, at least we'll have a guideline that the people will abide by. I don't think we can really answer the ethics question, because I feel like in some ways, the philosophy of what AI is almost transcends some of those things. Especially if we are ever at the point, we both write science fiction, so you gotta bring up the giant dark elephant in the room, the whole idea of singularity. Like, what if something achieved sentience? That then begs a whole different set of questions. We're not there. I'm quite certain. Elon told me we're not there yet. He said 6 months. But once if that happens, I don't think it will happen. I don't think, based on what ChatGPT is, I don't think that this thing that we're looking at is not that. But could we ever be at that thing? And I think that right now we're at such a formative stage, we're starting to ask the right questions. And I don't think we're going to have a consensus of agreement on things, probably for 5 years, or maybe 10.
At least.
And that's maybe not won't be an agreement, but at least we'll have a couple of guidelines so we can know where the boundaries are. We have to bounce in between these couple of guardrails if we're going to operate with this at all. And right now, though, aside from the whole like, hey, ChatGPT is uncomfortable with these things, but pseudo-right and violence, we're all over. Like, there aren't any realistic guidelines yet, but they're coming hard and fast because I think people see this. This could get real wild real quick.
It has come so fast. It has come so far, so fast, and it's frightening. But I don't think so. I can be afraid of it, and I took a course that I thought was going to be on marketing with ChatGPT. It was not. It was like, you don't even have to write the book. You can just have Chat. It literally was, and I was like, what am I watching? Oh my Lord, no, I can't do this. And it was literally, that was this course, and this, people are becoming very rich.
To write a very bad
fast.
book?
Yeah, right?
And we got the tool for you.
And people are becoming very wealthy very quickly with this tool, and that's going to be out there. It's going to happen because, like every piece of technology in the history of humankind, it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. So, do you have a closing thought before we open the floor to questions?
Yeah, I don't believe in science.
The world is flat.
It's not even flat. It's a triangle.
Oh, the world is
We're living
nice.
A pyramid?
Yeah, very good.
It's a pyramid. Yeah, it's a three-dimensional construct.
Go sit on the top.
Go ahead.
Look down.
All right, before we go into questions, I do want to make a comment.
Yes.
I feel that you mentioned some of this that was why I wanted to make a comment. ChatGPT does not process what you're saying. That's not what it is. It is not a processor at all. What it does is predict what you want it to say. So it's why you can get ChatGPT to say 2 + 2 = 5.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get it to say things sexual or.
So it's basically it's like being married to ChatGPT, because it won't. It's not going to do anything sexual for you. It wants to please you up until the ring is done, and then it's like, listen, we're done here. I want half everything you own, and I was all about making it happy.
This is a very happily married man, you guys. Like, I've met his wife. They're like adorable. Don't even.
We've been married for 23 years, and they've actually all been good. I hope she's watched this far.
Let's open it up for questions, comments, thoughts.
Certainly. First of all, thank you for coming. Are you both visiting Minnesota for this con?
I am. I live outside of Milwaukee, and I go all over the country like Chris. I do about 40 shows a year, and but yeah, this is my second or third time here at Twin Cities Con.
I'm originally from a tiny little town of less than 500 people in Minnesota, up near the Brainerd Lakes area. I actually sold a book today to somebody who works with somebody who I dedicated a book to because it's one of my comedy books. She had the sickest burn against me in my whole life, so I dedicated the fourth book in a series to her. Never told her, and I'm like, she mentioned this thing like, "Oh my God, I just realized the book you bought is dedicated to that woman." And there's literally less than 500 people in the whole geographic region. You need to show this to her. She's like, I will. I now live in Iowa in a giant haunted mansion because you can afford a mansion in Iowa, but it's also definitely haunted.
For about $50,000.
Well then, Mr. Chris, welcome back to Minnesota, and Ms. Jerry, or should I call you Red?
Either one.
Welcome to Minnesota.
Thank you.
I apologize profusely for the warm weather. We should be
I thought it was
out there
cold.
to get snow by now.
We had some snow already last week in Wisconsin too, so it's all good.
Well, if
I
you-
was trick or treating in the snowstorm of '91, so I feel what you're saying.
if you'll allow the poetry, I can always look at ChatGPT as being very good at echoing the works of past authors. And they are pretty good works, and so can sound pretty nice. But I want to thank you two for continuing to add new sound.
Oh, very well stated. I'm glad we got that on video.
Chris, last name?
Schmitz.
Other questions,
but-
comments?
Not those Schmitzes, but the other Schmitzes.
The other, okay.
I'm writing a sci-fi story. Well, I'm actually making a video, and all you can use for this video, the music, the dialogue, the pictures, the video, all of it has to be done with AI.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that none of these AI would do violence. And I'm trying to write a sci-fi story about space knights on some random quest that gets through like half it, and I keep asking it, well, I want there to be a fight at this part. It just kept skipping it. I'm wondering what's going on here. And
Try pseudo write. I want to say it's like.
I'm too far on the project. I just skipped it, and there was
Well,
a dialogue
you
fight.
can write
where-
just the one scene with it. I think it's like 3,000 to 6,000 words is what
Okay.
it will give you. It's a little more involved, say, than ChatGPT, but I think the results are a little better. I played with it some. What I like about it is you can highlight a passage and then give it a sense, and you can ask it to add some language about this. So, like, if you wanted to have something where it evokes the nuance of like smell, it will add in different senses to try and mimic that humanness of it, without you having to. Which is it's just like one of the couple buttons you can click, knowing that hey, we want to add that human condition element in because we are all real humans here who are writing with human senses.
See, this
Yeah,
is the
this-
stuff that's scary.
this class is
I
all
haven't
about
played with
new-
pseudo-write yet.
New and emerging media practices. So that's all we're focusing on, the ethics side of AI and how it will either have to be severely regulated in any field of art, or else it's going to have to innovate the field of art into a direction that some people might not want to see it go. I mean,
So here's
the only thing it has on a human
a
writer
headcanon for you.
is the speed. You get it right then.
True.
So you're talking about like you have to generate even your music with AI because music is basically just math.
11
There are different like equations that you can essentially break into musical formulas. I listen to a lot of that AI generated music while I'm writing. I'm like, it's full circle now. I'm like,
Wow.
it's real good concentration music and it'll get you in the zone. So.
Interesting. What else do we got out here? Thoughts, questions, comments? Doug?
Here's a thought.
Yeah.
You know, the last few years, I've also seen like a number of authors that are putting trigger warnings in the front of their books. Trigger warnings for this, there may be this in the book. So in the future, what if we might see somebody either willing or has to put a disclaimer, I did not use such software.
Yes.
whether
So
it's
that's
software
actually-
related.
Yeah, that
That's the
actually
regulation.
exists now to a certain extent. Chris and I both have both traditional and independent published works. So the independent, we both have Amazon availability, and Amazon does require now that when you put it up, you have to say whether it is, you do not have to say if it is AI assisted, but you have to say if it is AI generated. Now, it's the first step, and I think that there will be more of that kind of disclaimer that's probably coming, and the level of that disclaimer probably is going to get refined and refined. But yeah, I think you're probably right that that's coming.
I mean,
let me tack on to that before we answer your question. I think some of that though is Amazon gathering data for their AI stuff that they're doing now with their AI assisted audio production.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that they honestly care to engage in the ethics debate. I think for them it's a matter of gathering information that we can use in an algorithm later. And that's why they're asking about generative. And so just so you know, there's generative AI, that's when it creates a thing for you. But then there's also like some people would consider even Grammarly, which is a free use editor. I use Pro Writing Aid. Some people would consider using voice to text because it assists you by using an artificial means. So really even defining what is AI, I think we're on the same page that we're talking about the generative AI where you tell it, hey, ChatGPT, write me a story about Doug going dancing through the flowers, getting high at mescaline, losing his shirt, and then somehow becoming president of the United States of America. And it will write us that story, and it'll be awesome.
Well,
but
I don't know
it's-
about that.
I mean, I've had...
Let's get your question in here.
All right. First of all, I would definitely say that Grammarly would be considered assisted, considering it rewrites entire
Yes.
paragraphs.
Assisted but not generative.
Yes. Okay, so my comment was off of what you guys were talking about, which was, how do you enforce that? Because there's literally no way at this point to figure out if something was AI generated or not.
You're right.
Like, there's the programs that supposedly can.
Even
can't.
like the college
Anything-
check systems don't do it.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
they
literally
will
no
call
way.
things
Anything-
like
everything I've
plagiarized
done
that
so-
are not, and vice versa.
Yeah, so there's not really a way of enforcing that kind of thing.
There's not.
I want to get to this back here before we come back over to
I
you.
actually work in IT at a university.
Okay.
So we do a lot of this sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm dealing with this right now.
good, because I don't.
There are ways that people are starting to try and, I mean, anytime a computer does stuff, it's going to leave traces that you can use other computers to track. So I think if we really want to, if we work
But-
at it, we can,
I
at
think
least for now,
I
start
think
figuring
if
Yeah.
the collegiate system were
What?
working with the aid, then I think you could create those
That's
like tracking cookies, something where we could begin to trace it. I think
And
you're
it might
right.
even be a matter of legislating,
It-
when these things are done, there has to be tracks put in so that it
Yes.
can be found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna go that direction because AI is here and it's probably, especially for schooling. I get it.
I think that's why it will go that way though.
Exactly.
So
Well,
what do you got?
Oh yeah, no, I was
It's
in an
about
AI,
innovation.
Sorry.
I was in an AI panel earlier, and they were talking about how the University of Chicago is creating essentially Trojan horse to embed in your pictures.
Yes.
So that when AI tries to pull onto them, it essentially like makes it all melty and stuff.
It blocks.
That's kind of
Yeah.
what I was mentioning.
Yeah.
So for example, if you've ever used a Facebook ad, you can embed what's called a Google Pixel or a tracking pixel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1 pixel by 1 pixel. It's virtually invisible, and it will insert that onto a page. And just by the fact that it like loads in,
Yeah.
it's almost like having some kind of a security key embedded in there.
Yeah.
And so I think that if the collegiate system, in an effort to keep students honest, because we all know young people who are less than honest, it will take the easy way if possible. And so if they were able to combine with those the major models for a generative AI, I think that they could find a way to definitively decide whether or not this is AI or not. But I do believe we have reached the point where I think for that to happen it has to be legislated, because otherwise there's too much money involved.
there's too much money,
Yeah,
and
that's not going to happen. Not
it's
with
how it could
Congress.
innovate and help.
Well, Listen. First of all, anything that is put and generated on the internet comes with coding. You can look at the coding language, and something that's been generated by a computer is not necessarily going to look like the same thing that came out of a Photoshop file, specifically talking about images. And not only that, especially with the proliferation of actors being, like, having their faces and voices used. We were at a con a couple months ago with a bunch of voice actors who were having their voices taken without their consent.
See, that needs to be.
Politicians are starting to get
regulated.
that happening to them too, which is going to kick that legislation into effect.
Somebody
Amy
made-
Klobuchar of Minnesota actually is already putting that bill on the table.
Well,
Somebody
and I-
used Joe Biden's voice and a picture of Joe Biden. This is all over the internet. To say they literally made Joe Biden in Joe Biden's voice in a video that looks very real, him talking about nuclear war within the next couple days.
We call those things deep fakes.
Yeah.
They are real. They're out there. They're on both sides
Yep.
of the political spectrum. And I think you're right. I think that the fact that when it comes, I mentioned earlier, when it
Things like-
comes for you, it's suddenly a concern. And because it has come for the politicians based on the content that we consume on social media, because we all like to make fun of somebody ideologically different, because it's comfortable humor for us. It lets us stay in a safe space while villainizing somebody else. That's really where the easiest form of humor comes from. I think that's why legislators are like, you know what, let's do something about this because I don't like being made fun of. So I think we are going to get there, but I do also think that that's the right move because I think we need something that protects all of us because while it might be coming for your political opponent now, it might be coming for your political favorites tomorrow. Or it already is and vice versa.
We're gonna, over here, or were you just stretching?
No, I just stressed, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay, go ahead.
So, I mean, the other thing that I think is going to be interesting over the next few years is that AI, sort of by its definition, doesn't do anything new. It is a matter of rehashing things that are out there.
But that's
At least
like-
for the long-term
Yeah.
future, next few years, that's gonna be the way.
Well, and they've even said
So-
it started to eat itself.
Yeah.
Because
It'll go down
the
spirals.
content created by AI, it's like when you make a copy of a copy of a copy and it starts to get gray.
It's like an old VHS tape. that
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
so-
And-
Yeah, remember fax machines, right?
It has so deeply and vastly proliferated across the internet in such a short time that it has created more content like in the last year than what they said in like since the beginning of the internet. So it's like in the last year and so because of that, it's like these are copies of copies of copies, and now it's starting to eat itself. And I'm not. They'll figure it out because there's money.
Yes.
But
So
what
they're
I-
gonna figure it out, but it is starting to like you talk about like.
What
how
I worry
it's-
about though is that as we move on, how much is our media gonna deteriorate as more and more, even depending for your outlines or depending on anything for this sort of stuff, eventually starts to eat into
Yeah.
people's creativity.
Sure.
And, you
Tell
know-
me, everybody, like, tell me your mother's phone number.
Mhm.
Nobody can, probably
218.
almost nobody in this room.
Thanks for
I- I-
keeping
I-
us on 068.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of us, you know,
But
and
think
it's
about things
gonna
like
do the
maps.
same thing.
You know, if I had
Yeah,
to drive to the conference center now without my GPS,
And this is the
even
new
basic
thing.
math and stuff like that. So kids coming up in this generation, if we don't do something to change it, they're gonna end up using a lot of this, and writing skills are gonna go down.
So
I always-
you made a comment that it's not new, that it's been around,
Yep.
and it's really just rehashing what has been. Now, of course, now we're talking about the degradation of the quality. It's also not that different though than what our regular media is now. If you turn on and listen to your top 10, your top 20 on the radio, that's all just rehashed of the same old thing. If you pick up, how many Harry Potter clones are out there on the market? Because the publishing industry and the music industry operate very similar to each other. They don't care about what is good. What they care about is what can I sell right now? Not even what can I sell tomorrow, but what can I make a buck on right now? And so we've been seeing a definitive quality slide really since about the mid, maybe even the early 90s. And you can look at this. We all have radios in our cars, so music is easy to pick on because we all it permeates our culture through commercials and through sound bites in television and in movies. Who's that guy he was born in Duluth?
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. Thank you. Yes, Bob Dylan.
I went to
I always forget Bob Dylan's name. But Bob Dylan, right? Musical mastermind. The depth of his lyrics, the music which he wrote. He wrote the music and he wrote the words and he performed. He didn't get up and dance or shake his butt. But people like Beyonce can do a 6-word song and get it wiggle, 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 wiggle. And that's the whole song. $6 billion. Bob Dylan never sold 1 million copies. I think he just finally hit 1 million copies sold a year or two ago. But the depth of his lyric quality. Beyonce, money.
And it's probably
She's
audio
got
generated.
some quality too. I
Did-
don't want to be dissing on the queen bee
So
in here.
let me ask, did she write that?
No, she probably
No,
had
she
writers
did.
working for her. and
So
that's a-
that's the difference is the quality of somebody. So this is the analogy that I make, is that we as independent writers care about producing good things. Not what everybody else is doing, because we can use ChatGPT for that. We can ask it to write us something and then we can tweak it enough that we can call it our own and make a few bucks. But
And
we
what's
care.
going to happen
I
though
have
is
made-
because of that, that's going to I kind of feel like everything is hot and everything is AI right now. And it is. It's just putting out tons and tons. It's putting out the quantity, but the quality will stand
Yes.
out because
That's-
of that.
I
It's
firmly
when you
believe.
just, I think so too. And I think it's, so I prefer to have a more optimistic
Yes.
and hopeful belief about where this is going. It's coming from my job, but it can't do my job as well as I can.
So-
And so.
That's where the
My
regulations will
belief
come
when
in,
I
though. If
distill
it
all
does
that
go for
down,
people's jobs, they will
I
put
believe
regulations on
that independent writers, the people that you can meet at a convention, you can find Doug with his books, you can find Jerry with hers, you can find me with mine, and a bunch of the rest of us. I think we're saving literature. We're writing stuff that's good, usually. I mean, there's some of us that we get some stuff that maybe we didn't have any sense publishing, but it's there. I think that we are writing the stories that are the next big wave, because it's not the same. We've been inspired. Christopher Paolini got a lot of trash earlier in his career about just ripping off other people he was inspired by. But he was inspired. He wasn't directly plagiarizing. And
That's
so I
just
think
art,
we are
though.
saving.
So we're gonna let Doug
literature.
have the last question before we move on to our other topic, which is a little less heated, but a little more heat. Doug?
It was just also actually voicing appreciation to the people who come in here who aren't, even who aren't writing, but that do support us, because all those authors and artists down there, we know a lot of people come in to see the celebrities. And now an artist, you'll see what's on the wall and you'll grab it. For us authors, you don't know us, you don't know what's in the book. And for those of you that take a chance on it, we appreciate it, because it's hard to get into traditional publishing unless that company thinks you're just gonna make a buck, but it's like, they're not looking at story content. We appreciate when you guys take a chance on us.
I'll aim into that, absolutely. So, I know we could talk AI all night long, but we are looking forward to getting on to our next topic. I'm gonna take a little short break because we're running right after the other. In just a couple minutes, we are doing Your World After Dark. We're gonna talk gore, steam, and dark motivations in fiction. Feel free to stick around, but we are gonna take just a couple minutes break before we do that. And I am gonna put the QR code back up here, so if anybody is interested in getting the video of all 6 of the writing tracks that we have this weekend, just come on up, scan that, and you will get all of those emailed to you afterward. Thank you guys so much. I know this was a hot topic.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.